Hey, and welcome to Dr. G Speaks. I am Dr. Kristen Guillory, and I am so very excited to help you experience a life of freedom, faith, and fun you may not even realize is possible. Listen, I know you feel held back, I know you feel stuck, and I know you are hiding. As a coach and the author of Look, Stop Hiding, How to Find Your Voice and Never Dim Your Light Again, you will get to listen to some amazing stories, receive some homework, that's the professor in me, and get some tools to help you live the life you deserve. It's time to quiet the noise and walk in the fullness of who God created you to be. It's time to stop hiding and start thriving. Together, we'll uncover your potential and ignite your journey to a fulfilling life, a life of freedom. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Mexico with my sister and 14 other amazing women as my sister and I co-hosted our fourth retreat for Black women. And I was talking to her about my confusion or not fully understanding why people were so enthralled by this one particular story of mine, and not just the women at the retreat, but over the last few years, the interest, the excitement, the Dr. G, write the book, put this in a book. And my confusion, like, why is this such a big deal? And my sister said to me, the mountaintop has been your norm. It's been your norm to experience kindness from men in your life who are friends or men you've dated. And I was legitimately confused. On one end, I didn't realize how rare, unfortunately, how rare my journey connected to men really is. I also didn't realize that the mountaintop was my norm, where my sister would say, women see where you are and what you've experienced and may not even realize that that's a possibility. Before hearing you, they might not have even realized that there is another option. And so your norm is the mountaintop. We were talking about the fabulous Jennifer Lewis and her book, The Mother of Black Hollywood, that I have listened to on Audible. I've even recommended it to many people, probably more than any other book that I've recommended in the last year. I think Jennifer Lewis is fabulous. She is bold. She is confident. She is authentically her. She owns mistakes. She owns who she is. She takes up space. And my sister was saying, yes, when you listen to her, that's normal for you. Like, you don't see that as this very unreachable place to be. And I said, no. And she said, yeah, a lot of women don't hear her as that's going to be where I am, or this is who I am now. There may be an adoration. There may be more in listening to her. And yes, it is normal for me to know that I deserve all the things, respect, value, that I can take up space, that I rest, and more. And this has just been something that has been a part of me for many, many, many years. Now, I am human. I have hard moments. I have insecurities. I've struggled with different insecurities and doubt and fear at times over the years. And it's literally never even been a question for me whether I would accept disrespect. I mean, that just never has been anything. And my sister said, that's a norm for you. And I had to sit in that. While I did not fully understand, my sister said, I don't know if you have to fully understand. And that was correct. I started to realize that there are places in my life where I've been standing on something elevated and I didn't even know because it was my norm. And this realization started opening something deeper in me, something in me that even caused sadness. And the sadness is that I believe that there are women who believe that they have deserved disrespect or excused disrespect or just believe it's par for the course, that yes, this is going to be the reaction. Yes, that's going to be how someone treats you. And while I didn't have language for it at first, until I started sharing my story with other women, and the reactions that I got started teaching me something that I didn't know I needed to learn. The reactions to stories that I would share caused me to pause. And this norm for me in being treated with kindness and respect from male friendships and even the couple of men I've dated, that's been my norm. I remember telling some women in the last couple of weeks, if I think about my friendships I've had with males from the ninth grade until today, they have never been unkind, disrespectful, or dismissive. Yes, have there been disagreements? Yes, have there been, okay, what was that? And there was some interpretation that was needed, but unkindness and cruelty and dismissiveness, I have never experienced that from men I've been friends with and men I've dated. I did not realize how abnormal that was. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I can't even pinpoint when that became something for me. And I want to be very, very, very clear with this right here. If someone chooses to disrespect you or abuse you, it is not your fault. Absolutely not. Abuse and disrespect is always the choice from the abuser and the person who's being disrespectful. Always. I want to be very clear. You could walk with so much authority and know that you deserve the world, and someone could still choose to be harmful and disrespectful. I was in Los Angeles about a year ago and I had an interview on a show. I met a couple of amazing people, and one of the women shared with me that she was giving a keynote talk in the coming weeks. And I said, "Oh, well, I'm a speaker coach. I'm open to hearing the opening of your message." And here's the truth, y'all, I don't do that. Like, that is not something that I do when people say they have a message. I don't say, "Hey, I'm a speaker coach. Do you want me to hear it?" I don't do that. And so I think even in the moment as I was mouthing the words to her, inside I was scratching my head like, why am I offering this? I'm not trying to work right now, but it came out so smoothly. "Hey, I'm open to hearing the opening of your message." And she said, "Oh, that'd be great." And she shared that I had finally made it to the front door when I was able to call 911. And in that moment, I realized that it wasn't the emergency that was my 911 moment, it was my self esteem. I interrupted her so quickly and said, "Absolutely not. Absolutely not." And she looked at me and was like, "Wait, what?" And she oozed kindness and had a pretty large platform to encourage women. And my response was, "Absolutely not. It was not your self esteem that led to you needing to call 911. It was that a loser put their hands on you." And she looked at me, and the other woman next to her was really enjoying what I was saying. And the woman who was giving the talk looked at me, and I said, "I'm so sorry. I am so very sorry that you experienced that. I'm so sorry." And I asked her when had that occurred, and it had occurred in the last 2 years. And I said, "This is still fresh. I'm so sorry." It was not self-esteem. They made a choice. Now, is self-esteem involved in some way? Perhaps. Maybe one of the 15 things involved in choosing to stay or thinking that you deserved it. But self-esteem, lack of self-esteem did not cause a loser to put his hands on this woman. And I found myself saying this in different variations to different women in particular. You did not cause him to call you out of your name. He chose to do so. Is this me saying all men are harmful? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I am reflecting on reactions that women in particular have had when I talk about my personal journey with men. So, again, if someone chooses to be harmful to you, I am so sorry. And that was their choice and not your fault at all. So, I'm not saying that if someone experiences disrespect or abuse, it's their fault. I'm going to double down on that. It is not. It's absolutely not. Abuse is a choice. What I'm talking about for me is my internal wiring, what I assumed was kind of standard. And that was wrong of me to assume that without realizing it may not be everyone else's experience. And again, I didn't realize it until I began telling stories. I would start sharing how I communicated in friendships, how I processed conflict, how we navigated uncomfortable moments, and the reactions would be massive. I remember I shared a story that I have shared multiple times about a friendship that I was in. And part of the story is I would say, whenever there's something that he does that I don't like, or it makes me frustrated or angry, I always try to take a day to think and pray about it because it might not have been him. It might have been me where I was in the moment. And then when it's still bothering me, I will go to him, go to my friends. I've done this with multiple people, and I'll say, I know there was no malicious intent. And when you did that, I didn't like it, or when you said that. And his response was always, I'm so sorry. Thank you for sharing. When I shared that with someone the first time, they said, Whoa, I'll never forget that. And I was so confused. I shared a part of that story with someone else, and they said, Wow. I shared it at a women's event, and the room just kind of like, Ooh. And I just was so perplexed as to why that was such a significant story that led to that reaction. And I started learning from women who would share with me, oh, oh, that's not my norm over here. When I bring up something to my male friend or my brother or my husband or the guy I'm dating, there's a lot of the times deflection or defensiveness or even denial. At the retreat, the recent rest retreat, I shared that part of the story when I was telling the ladies a longer part of the journey. And in that moment, when I said, and his reaction is, I'm so sorry. Thank you for sharing. Please keep sharing because I'd like to keep learning and do better. I felt a heaviness in that moment among some of the women. And I talked to my sister about that, and she shared, yeah, because that's probably not the reaction that they've often gotten. And I remember a woman telling me that when she hears that part of my story, she has to brace herself because that was not the experience she got in her marriage. She said there is some sadness that overcomes her when she hears that. And that began to allow me to understand why that reaction, why I would get that reaction to that particular story. There would be other elements that I would share about different male friends and the shock on people's faces. I remember being in high school and I was in band. I played the clarinet, shout out clarinet. I played the clarinet and I was standing with one of my friends and then a guy who was also in band who we were cool with. He came up to talk to us and he was joking, but I remember him saying like, "Oh, you bees are crazy or you bees are something." I must have partially blacked out because I was twisting his hand and it was nothing. It was absolutely not. And I'm in the 10th grade. maybe ninth grade when that happened. No, I did not witness unkindness in my household. No, I did not witness unkindness from men in my family when I was younger. I did not see these things. And so I thought, where did this come from? There has just always been something in me that immediately rejects disrespect, that I call raggedy, that would immediately remove myself. I was a senior in high school when we were on three way. Y'all remember three way? Come on, three way. I was on three way with two of my male friends, one who was still in high school, another who was a freshman in college. And the friend who was in college was talking and talking about life and all that stuff. And he said, be pleased. Before he could even say the word please, I hung up. They said they didn't even realize I'd hung up for at least a minute. They called me back and I said, oh, I don't play about that. You will not call me the B word. And he spent about an hour apologizing to me. I don't even care if you playing. I don't do that. I don't do that with female friendships as well. I was in college. I might have been a sophomore in college and was talking to a friend who was a freshman in college. And she said something similar. I said, oh, no, you don't get to call me that. No, no, no. I'm just playing. It's a term of endearment. I don't do that. I don't change negative words and make them powerful. That's not what I choose to do. For other people who choose to do that, that is their right. I don't want it. I don't. B, you better wear that dress. You can tell me wear that dress, but you will not call me that. And this has just always been in me, and not just about respect just towards me. It is respect towards all women. I remember my freshman year of college, I was dating a football player. And I went home for the weekend and I came back, and one of my friends told me that he had been a little mean to her, like he had dismissed her or something like that. Done. Done, son. I was done immediately. And we talked and I said, I hear that you were mean to my friend. He was like, yeah, man, I just this and this. I said, then we're done. And he was like, wait, what? But it wasn't you. I said, I don't care. That's a friend of mine. I don't do unkindness. I don't do cruelty. I don't do disrespect. Absolutely not. At a conversation with a colleague last year, and there was a conversation that was taking place, and she told me about a couple that she knew. And in the middle of a conversation, the husband didn't like something the wife said. And during this conversation, amongst other people, the husband was kind of mean to his wife. Like he was mean because she didn't answer a question the way that he preferred or the way that he liked. And so I'm talking to my colleague who said that the husband mentioned how appreciative he was of the space and how appreciative he was of different things and wanting to learn and more. And she said, you know, what do you think? I said, I think is sorry. I think he's sorry. And she said, I don't even think she said anything. I think she was so stunned. I said, I think he's sorry. You are going to be cruel to your wife because she responded in a way you didn't prefer. I said, I don't do cruelty. I do not. Let me tell you, I do not. I unfortunately have had friends who have experienced cruelty from the men they were married to or dating. And I learned something about a friend in the last 2 years. And she shared a story with me. And she said, no, we're much better today, but a couple of years ago, we weren't. And she shared this story with me. And I said to her, I'm so sorry. And my friend, you're going to have to give me a moment because I'm just learning of this. I'm just learning. And I said, okay, I'm glad to hear you're better. But let me say this, if anything pops off, you can call me. Okay? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, does the absolutely not mean that you're done with the person forever? Not necessarily, but it can be. And this has always been my posture. I have never even partially, y'all can probably hear my voice. I have never even partially tolerated or dealt with cruelty and disrespect. And again, even if you are someone who has experienced it or you would say I've tolerated it, it still does not excuse them. People have choices. I hear people say, you have to teach people how to treat you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, when there's boundaries, sure. And it's still the person's choice to be cruel, to be unkind, to be dismissive. I want to be very clear on that. There is a story that I know of where the husband chose to yell and kind of talk back after a conversation that he didn't like. And I said, no, you had choice. You could have walked away. You could have prayed. Your choice was to use inappropriate language. Your choice was to raise your voice. And so, ladies in particular, even though this message is for everyone, I want to talk to women. And ladies, you have choice too. You have choice to say, I'm going to step away. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to leave. If you continue to choose to speak to me like that or act like that, whatever it is, ladies, you have choice as well. Okay? When someone chooses to be unkind, what is your choice? And I am not pretending that it is just easy to walk away because I understand there are so many factors there, such as how somebody was raised, things connected to worth and value, things connected to scarcity mindset, things connected to, oh no, if I walk away, maybe I'll be single. And those are things for you to work through, pray through, talk to a therapist, talk to wise counsel about. I recently had a conversation with a male friend who did something that we had to talk about that just wasn't good. And his response was, I'm so sorry. I'm going to take a moment and sit in what you shared, and I'm going to reach back out. He reached back out and said, okay, I have some more learning. I have some ways that I can improve. And thank you for telling me. Thank you for loving me enough to bring this to my attention. Because what I told him is, this may be a little weird and uncomfortable for a week or two because anytime there is a disagreement or anytime that there is something else needing to be discussed, it's a little unique. But I said to him, because of the respect we have for each other, the love we have for each other, we will make it work. And along with respect and love, we both are willing to stay in it and work through it and not run away, not just say, I'm sorry to end the conversation and move on, but willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. This has been my norm. This has been my norm. And recently, someone said to me, Doc, please keep sharing your experiences because they're helpful for us to hear. It's helpful to know that there's possibility. It helps to know that there's a different option. There was a guy I was dating 14 years ago, and we were driving to Oklahoma to go to a Jill Scott concert. And we were in the car, and on the way there, I said something. I forget what I said, but he kind of did a dismissive movement with his hand. Like, oh, never mind, or whatever it was. It was kind of a dismissive thing with his hand. And I immediately stopped and said, did you just dismiss me? And he said, oh, I was just kidding. I was upset for the remainder of that ride. You are not going to dismiss me. So we pull up maybe 20 minutes later. He comes around to my passenger door and he apologizes and he explains and he just says, I'm so sorry. I would never want to dismiss you. I apologize. And we're walking in and he asked, do you mind if I hold your hand? I said, no, we can hold hands. And about 20 minutes later, we were fine. And for me, I don't tolerate disrespect, even when it's through a lens of joking. I don't. This is me. Am I saying, y'all be who I am? I'm not. I'm not. I'm just pointing out things that I've learned. The way I have been for many years and reactions showing me different things. The number of conversations I've had with women and pointed out, so the behavior over there was inappropriate. Oh my goodness. Their responses would be, oh my goodness, I never even thought about that. I know who I am. And what I've learned is, like a Jennifer Lewis and other women, when you are confident and know who you are in the Lord, you know that you are a queen and you know you deserve it all. Things change. Again, somebody can still be harmful to a confident woman. Yes, yes. Ladies, have you ever normalized disrespect in your life? Have you ever excused unkindness, abuse, disrespect in your life? Did you even know that it was an option not to normalize unkindness, disrespect, cruelty in your life? Do you believe that you're in a place to truly be open to things that are not connected to disrespect, unkindness, and dismissiveness? There was a friend of mine that recently shared with me that in college, he put up his own boundaries for himself to be around me because he saw how I carried myself differently. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, we would hang out all the time, we would do this, but you always had a posture of just complete respect, complete, nope, we're not flirting, nope, we're not doing anything. And what I didn't know, y'all, 20 plus years later, is he said, I had to put up a boundary for myself, meaning I couldn't hang out with you late at night because there was attraction that I had to you, but that's not anything about where you were going. And so I had to have a boundary for myself. And I didn't even know that I was doing that in my posture. I didn't even realize that that's what that was. I've had another male friend say to me, one of my biggest goals is to make sure you always feel respected. You demand and command respect. Again, I know that I do, but I didn't know that I did at the level that people say. And again, I'm going to say this, you can command and demand respect. It still might not and won't prevent people from choosing to be disrespectful and harmful. Let me be very clear on this again. Y'all, I've always had respect as a value. I've always had boundaries. I don't care who you are. If there is disrespect, done, son. Okay. And that does not exclude family. That does not exclude family. There have been times where some male family members were unkind and were disrespect. I said I've never experienced it from male friends and men I've dated. Unfortunately, one family member talked to me halfway crazy some years ago, and I didn't talk to them for 9 months. And when we talked again, I said, do you know why we haven't talked? Because you took out some frustration that had nothing to do with me on me, and you used some inappropriate language. Now, this person did not call me out of my name because I would never talk to them again. That, please, please. And they understood. And then another family member allowed someone to influence them, but it was still his choice. And I think hung up on me on the call. Done, done. Absolutely not. And I resolved in myself that if they did not call to apologize and own what they did, I would never talk to them again. Never talk to them again. And y'all want to know who I'm talking about? My father. So I don't care who you are. I do not care who you are. I don't care. And this was maybe 6 years ago or so. And he did call the next day and he did apologize. And we talked for a while about that. And I said, Dad, if you would not have apologized to me, we would have been done and you would have missed out on somebody amazing. Absolutely. So let me be very clear. I don't care who you are. I do not do disrespect. Okay. Now, I want to be very clear. For the woman who didn't know that you had a choice, I'm so sorry. For the women who were told or who learned that they had to accept breadcrumbs on the floor, and make the floor the ceiling, I'm so sorry. For the women who have only experienced deflection, denial, or disrespect, I'm so sorry. For the women who have experienced abuse, I'm so sorry. Because this is what I want you to know. You do not have to believe disrespect is your norm. You don't have to accept it. You get to choose to leave. You get to choose to speak up. You get to choose to get help. And there is another way. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. What if what you've been tolerating was never meant to be your standard? Where did you learn that it was normal to be treated with unkindness if that is part of your journey? What if you've been negotiating with something you were never supposed to normalize? What would shift if you believed you actually had options? Respect is not the ceiling, it is the floor. And anything less than that is not something you have to call love or friendship or marriage or kindness to survive it. You have choices. You are not asking for too much. You are remembering what was always meant to be normal. And if you've never seen it, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means you're being introduced to something you were never shown. Your affirmation for today. I am allowed to name what I experience. I am allowed to expect respect. I am allowed to choose differently, and I am not bound to what I once thought was normal. I am a queen who is worthy of everything. Thank you so much for listening to the Dr. G Speaks podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Deuces.